Can you prepare for the IELTS in 24 hours? Yes, you can. And you can start by watching this video until the end. In this video, you'll first complete full practice sections for listening, reading, speaking, and writing. You'll also learn essential tips to help you score higher in each section, as well as useful vocabulary for both the speaking and writing parts of the test. Let's get started. We're going to work through a passage from the IELTS reading section. Here's how it works. We'll tackle the first question from each set together. I'll walk you through each step of the strategy you should use to answer these questions. And then you'll have the chance to practice applying the strategy on your own. As you go, you'll see the correct answers after each question you solve. Now, this isn't how it will be on test day, but it's a really effective way to practice at home, especially if you're not completely confident in how to apply the strategy just yet. It's like drilling the strategy to make sure you can use it easily on test day. It helps you catch mistakes and learn from them right away. My students say this approach works wonders and helps them improve their scores much faster. Let's get started. The first thing I do is read the title. In this case, it says, How Tennis Rackets Have Changed. Right away, I know the text will be about tennis rackets and how they evolved over time. After reading the title, I skip the passage and go straight to the questions. The first set of questions are true, false, or not given. For these, I use a simple strategy. I start by reading the first question, then go back to the passage and focus on the first paragraph, looking for the answer to that specific question. Once I find it, I move on to the second question and so on. The first question says, People had expected Andy Murray to become the world's top tennis player for at least 5 years before 2016. Before diving into the passage, I think about what I need to look for. The important details in this statement are, people had expected, and at least 5 years before 2016. These clues tell me that the focus isn't on whether or not Andy became the world's top tennis player. It's about what people thought of him 5 years earlier. Next, I go back to the passage and scan the first paragraph. I notice it mentions Andy becoming the world's #1 player in 2016, which was a big deal because of the tough competition he faced. Then in the final sentence, I spot the phrase 5 years previously. This is a signal to slow down and read carefully. Here's what it says. Yet, 5 years previously, he had been regarded as a talented outsider who entered but never won the major tournaments. The sentence is key. It tells us that 5 years before reaching the top, Andy was seen as just a talented player, not someone people believed could become the world's #1 player. Since this directly contradicts the statement in the question, the answer is false. Now, it's your turn to tackle the remaining questions. You'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds per question. To make things easier, I'll show you only the question and the relevant part of the text where the answer lies. On test day, you won't have this advantage, but it's great practice for mastering the true-false, not given strategy. And don't forget to watch out for synonyms. The wording in the questions might be paraphrased in the passage, so pay attention to similar meanings. Ready? Let's get started. The answer is false. Murray made 2 changes. One was visible, the other was subtle, meaning it wasn't obvious. This was the change he made to his rackets. So, the statement that the change Andy Murray made to his rackets attracted a lot of attention is definitely false. Many students get this question wrong because they skip over the sentence about the subtle change and jump straight to the end of the paragraph, where the author talks about how Murray changed his rackets. The answer is not given. There is no information on whether or not most of the world's top players take professional stringers on tour. The answer is false. The rackets Mike and Bob use now weigh more than the average model. The answer is not given. There is no information on whether Fisher played with a spaghetti-strung racket of his own design or not. The answer is true. The choice of the strings and the tension with which they're installed depends on climatic conditions. The answer is true. Much of Pete's serving power was attributed to the addition of 4 to 5 lead weights onto his rackets. Great. Before we move on to the next set of questions, I have a quick suggestion. If your IELTS test is coming up and you're running out of time but still struggling to reach your target score in reading or any other section, consider joining our comprehensive IELTS course. It only takes 2 weeks to complete. By the end, you'll be fully prepared for the test. I'll also provide detailed feedback on your speaking and writing. You'll get an estimated score and learn exactly what you need to improve. Don't let your extra time during the winter holidays go to waste. Join our IELTS community, take the test with confidence, and achieve your dreams. These are note completion questions. The strategy is simple. First, check the instructions. It says choose one word only from the passage. This means that your answer should be one word, not a number. Next, look at the first question. Mike and Bob Bryan made changes to the types of blank used in their racket frames. What are the key words here? The key words are the ones that help us find the part of the text that answers the question. These are often names, numbers, or words that are hard to paraphrase. In this case, the keywords are obviously Mike and Bob Bryan. Now, let's think about what kind of word will fill the gap. Use your grammar knowledge to predict the answer. It's likely to be a plural noun or an uncountable noun, since there is no article before the gap. It's probably a term related to the elements of a racket, which Mike and Bob could change. Good. Now let's go back to the passage and find the right sentence. I scan the text until I spot Mike and Bob Bryan. I start reading, keeping in mind that I'm looking for an element of the racket that both players changed. I also know that I might see synonyms for change, like alter or adjust. As soon as I see the word adjusted, I know this is probably the sentence I need. It says, they explain how they have adjusted not only racket lengths, but even experimented with different kinds of paint. There are 2 elements of the racket that were changed: racket length and paint. Both are uncountable, so they match my initial prediction. Then I notice more synonyms. Types of becomes kinds of, so the correct answer is clearly paint. I then read the sentence with paint in it to make sure it fits. Mike and Bob Bryan made changes to the types of paint used in their racket frames. The sentence makes perfect sense. Now it's your turn to solve the rest of the questions. The correct answer is topspin. The spaghetti-strung racket created a string bed that generated too much topspin, so you can say that the racket created topspin. The correct answer is training. The text says that racket modification is equal in significance to nutrition or training. Since diet means the same as nutrition, training is the missing word. The correct answer is either gut or intestines. If you wrote one of these options, you answered the question correctly. All tennis rackets were strung with natural gut, which was made from animal intestines. The correct answer is weight. As we've read before, Pete added 4 to 5 lead weights to his rackets. The correct answer is grips. The Portuguese player replaced the original grips of his rackets. Today, we're going to do a full listening test from the latest official Cambridge IELTS 20 practice book. By the end of this video, you'll find out your current listening score, learn useful tips to help you get Band 9, discover one of the most common traps in IELTS listening, build must-know vocabulary, and understand the small details that can cost you marks. So, no long theory, no general advice like improve your English, no overwhelming explanations, This video is practical, focused, and designed to help you understand exactly what you need to do to score a 9 out of 9 in IELTS listening. Let's start. Listening part 1. First, you'll do part 1 on your own. Don't worry about strategies yet. Don't overthink it. Just follow the instructions and answer the questions. After you finish, I'll explain everything you need to know. Before we begin, remember this. If the instructions say one word, write only one word. For example, restaurant. If they say one number, write one number. For example, 60. If they say one word and one number, you can write something like 5 kilograms. Always check the instructions carefully. This is one of the easiest ways to lose a mark. One more important thing before we start. The latest official Cambridge IELTS 20 book surprisingly has a few typos and inconsistencies. In the test, there is a typo before the first answer. It says VA, but it should be just A. I'm mentioning this because it confused me when I did the test, and I don't want it to confuse you. Normally, Cambridge materials are extremely reliable, so this kind of mistake is unusual. So, now you're ready? Let's begin with listening part 1.
You will hear a woman who is caring for her elderly mother talking to a friend. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
It's really good to see you, Tom. Since I had to give up work, I feel I'm losing touch with my friends and colleagues.
We really miss you in the office. We were all so sorry you had to leave. But you must be relieved to have more time to look after your mother. How is she?
Well, she's very cheerful, but she needs a lot of help.
Have you tried to get any support from the local council?
No, I didn't know I could.
Yes, they offer different kinds of practical support. They realise that carers sometimes need time for all the other responsibilities they have, apart from the person they're caring for, and also that they sometimes need a break.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell me more. How do I go about getting this support?
Well, you'd have to have an assessment of your mother's needs. That means someone would come round and talk to you about the situation and what you need. So, for a start, they'd want to know the amount of time you spend looking after your mother every day.
Okay.
Then they'll probably ask you what sorts of tasks you do for your mother during the day. Things like if she needs help with getting dressed, for example.
Right, I help her with that. And also I help her get into the shower in the morning.
Yes, that sort of thing. They'll probably ask you if you do the shopping for her and help her at meal times, and whether she can cope using money.
Yes, that's becoming a bit of a problem. She used to be very good at it, but not anymore.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
And be ready to tell them about anything you find particularly difficult about caring for your mother.
So recently, I've noticed she's started to have quite bad problems with her memory. If I wasn't there, I think she'd forget to eat, for example. And often she doesn't seem quite sure what day it is.
Yes, tell them about that. And are there any physical difficulties you have caring for her? Lifting her, for example.
Yes, she's quite heavy, and I'm afraid of hurting my back. I'd be in real trouble if that happened.
They can give you advice about that, and also about how to avoid the possibility of your mum having a fall.
Great. So once they've done this assessment, if I'm eligible, what happens next?
Well, they might support you financially. So they might help you with transport costs, like if you have to get a taxi to take your mother for an appointment, for example.
I usually drive her myself, actually. So could I claim for the petrol?
You could, and you can claim for the insurance too.
Oh, right.
And if you need help with the housework, they can arrange for someone to come along once or twice a week. And one other thing, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's important you look after yourself. And it seems to me you're under quite a bit of stress.
I am, yes.
Well, tell the council, because they may be able to give you some advice on how to minimize it.
Really? Though, actually, I feel so much better having talked to you. I'll get in touch with the council straight away. Now, shall we go for coffee or something?
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1.
Let's check your answers. Break, time, shower, money, memory, lifting, fall, taxi, insurance, stress. Make sure every answer is spelled correctly. If the spelling is wrong, the answer is wrong. Now, keep track of your scores. One correct answer equals 1 point. You can count your correct answers or your wrong answers. Both are fine. But if you're usually good at listening, it's often easier to count how many mistakes you made. If you got all 10 answers correct, great. You can skip this explanation and go straight to part 2. But if you made even one mistake, listen carefully. There is one key thing you need to understand about IELTS listening. Treat it like a math test, not a language test. Why? Because language is flexible. You can say the same thing in many different ways and they can all be correct. But IELTS listening is not flexible. It's strict. If you don't know the rules and follow them exactly, you lose marks. So what are the rules? First, use the keywords in the questions to follow the conversation. You usually won't hear the answer in the first sentence. You often won't hear it in the second sentence either. You need to wait until the speakers reach the right part of the conversation. Here, the key phrase is local council. At the beginning, they just exchange a few polite comments. Nothing important yet. Then the woman's friend says, "Have you tried to get any support from the local council?" That's your signal. Now they're getting to the important part. So don't panic if you don't hear the answer immediately. That is completely normal. Next, listen for the idea of time and responsibilities. The friend says, yes, they offer different kinds of practical support. They realize that carers sometimes need time for all the other responsibilities they have. And here it is. The answer is time. So the process is simple. Find the keywords, wait for the right part, listen for the exact answer, write it carefully. That's how you should approach IELTS listening. Rule number 2, predict the answer. Look at this sentence. This can give a carer something. So before you even listen, you already know something important. The missing word is probably a noun. And not just any noun. It's probably a countable noun. Why? Because we have a before the blank. In English, usually comes before a singular countable noun. So now your brain is ready. You are not listening for a verb. You're not listening for an adjective. You are listening for a countable noun. Then the speaker says, they realize that carers sometimes need time for all the other responsibilities they have, apart from the person they're caring for, and also that they sometimes need a break. And there it is. The answer is break. It fits perfectly. It's a noun. It's countable. You can say 1 break, 2 breaks, 3 breaks, but we cannot say 1 air, 2 airs, 3 airs in the same way, because air is uncountable. So again, don't just listen, predict. Good prediction makes the answers much easier to catch. Rule number 3, anticipate synonyms. In IELTS listening, you often see one phrase in the question, but hear the same idea in different words. So in a way, IELTS listening is like decoding a message. You have to recognize the meaning, not just wait for the exact same words. Let's look at the synonyms from this part. Dressing, getting dressed. Dealing with money, cope using money. Loss of memory, quite bad problems with her memory. Preventing a fall, avoid the possibility of your mom having a fall. Fuel, petrol. Reduce stress, minimize it, meaning stress. These are the kinds of changes IELTS loves. The meaning stays the same, but the words change. That is why you must listen for ideas, not just exact words. Now, it's time to move on to part 2. Again, you'll complete it on your own first. Then I'll come back with the correct answers, explanations, and the traps you need to watch out for.
Part 2. You will hear a man who works for Elmley Town Council talking to some people who want to join the small town's volunteer scheme. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Wainwright from Elmley Town Council, and I organise the town's volunteer scheme. I'm delighted you're all interested in joining the scheme. Our volunteers help to create a sense of community among the many people who live in our historic town of Elmley and make residents and visitors feel welcome at local events. First, I'll mention just a few of the activities that volunteers carry out. One is to walk around the town centre streets wearing our volunteer T-shirt. Tourists often ask how to get to a particular shop, and they might also be grateful for recommendations about what to visit. The town holds a large number of concerts each year, and part of the volunteers' role is to get everyone in the audience to the right place as smoothly as possible. You'd be surprised how many people buy tickets, then don't check them, and head for the wrong section of the hall. Volunteers may get involved with community groups, such as sports clubs or gardeners' associations. Here, the volunteers talk about how groups can help each other. For instance, a writing group might want to travel to another town to hear a talk by a well-known author, but may not know that another club has a coach they could travel in. The town produces a monthly magazine, and anyone who lives in the town can send in articles. It's free to residents and is paid for by local businesses. That's the responsibility of the council's advertising department. We depend on volunteers, though, to find out what people think of events they've attended and any suggestions they have for the future. The volunteers then send a summary to the editors. There are a number of clubs for retired people, and every year the council arranges lunch for all the members. The volunteers welcome the guests, and when everyone's sitting down and relaxing after the meal, some volunteers put on a show, usually around half an hour of songs and short plays. The club members really welcome the chance to chat to the volunteers at these events. The town council has a website, of course, and volunteers are asked to help by making sure residents know about it. It's updated every day with information about future activities, and we want as many people as possible to use it.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Okay, now you know some of the things our volunteers do. I'll go on to some practical matters. As you probably know, the town arranges 3 major festivals every year, and they all depend on a large number of volunteers. The book festival lasts 3 days and uses several venues which all need volunteers. More are needed for the music festival because that lasts a whole week, and even more help is required for the science festival, even though it's only 2 days long. It involves quite a lot of venues, though. It's a good idea to help at the festival you're most interested in, because you can attend most of the events for free. We try to use volunteers who are flexible, though, because some festival events are held outdoors, and the weather may affect the size of the audience and even whether the event can take place, so there can be changes at short notice. What's essential, though, is being able to get on well with other people and also to deal with someone who's behaving badly, as occasionally happens. Our plan is to get you all working in September, after a week's training starting on the 2nd. So we'll be timetabling you for duties the following week from the 9th onward. Later, in the week beginning September 23rd, we have a chat with each of you to find out how you feel about being a volunteer and what extra support you need. As a thank you to the volunteers, we arrange an annual event. In recent years, we've had a party in the town hall, and last year, a barbecue in Chamber Park. Our forthcoming event is a trip along the canal from here to Dewhurst and back. It's on Saturday, September the 28th, and if you'd like to attend, you can sign up once you start work. Now, this is the volunteers' T-shirt.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2.
Yes, this one was tougher, right? Let's check your answers first. 11D, 12I, 13H, 14E, 15A, 16B, 17B, 18A, 19B, 20A. Again, calculate your score. You can count your correct answers or your mistakes, whichever is easier for you. If you get all the answers right, great. Move on to part 3. If not, stay with me. Rule number 4 is especially important for tasks like this first task in part 2, matching. This is when you need to match one set of information with another. And here's the rule. Don't waste time reading questions 11 to 16. Why? Because they come in order. The speaker will mention question 11 first, then question 12, then question 13, and so on. Some phrases in the questions may be paraphrased, but usually not too heavily. The main keywords often stay very close to the original wording. So, instead of spending all of your preparation time analyzing the questions, focus on the answer options, A to I. That's where the real challenge is. As you've already seen, the answer options are often heavily paraphrased. So, during preparation time, analyze them carefully and simplify them in your head. This helps you choose the answer quickly while listening. Let's look at question 13 together. Many of my students find this one difficult in one-on-one sessions. A lot of people choose G instead of H. Question 13 says, getting involved with community groups. Now, what does the speaker say? Volunteers may get involved with community groups, such as sports clubs or gardeners associations. Here, the volunteers talk about how groups can help each other. For instance, a writing group might want to travel to another town to hear a talk by a well-known author, but may not know that another club has a coach they could travel in. Let's simplify it. Volunteers can take part in community groups. These community groups include things like sports clubs or gardeners associations. But what do volunteers actually do there? They talk about how different groups can help each other. Then the speaker gives an example. A writing group wants to travel to another town to listen to a talk by a famous author, but they don't know that another club has a coach they could use. So what is happening here? The volunteers help connect these groups. One group needs something. Another group has it. Volunteers help them work together. So the correct answer is H. Encourage cooperation between local organizations. In simple words, they help local groups cooperate and support each other. That's why H is correct, not G. Rule number 5. When you look through the answer options, feel free to simplify them. For example, provide entertainment means organize fun activities. Or, even more simply, something connected with fun. So when you hear putting on a show in the recording, you immediately know the answer is A. Rule number 6. Watch out for traps. Let's talk about one of the most common traps in IELTS listening. I'll show you one right now. Did you make a mistake in question 19? If yes, you probably fell for this trap. In question 19, you had to choose the time when new volunteers will start working. Notice that word, working, not training. The speaker says, our plan is to get you working in September after a week's training starting on the 2nd. When you hear this, you immediately want to choose A, September 2nd. But that is not the answer. The speaker clearly says the training starts on the 2nd. Then he says, so we'll be timetabling you for duties the following week from the 9th onward. Now, he is no longer talking about training. He says timetabling you for duties. That means they will put volunteers on the work schedule. In other words, this is when the volunteers actually start working. So the correct answer is B, September 9th. But IELTS doesn't stop there. The speaker then gives you another date. Later in the week, beginning September 23rd, we have a chat with each of you to find out how you feel about being a volunteer and what extra support you need. This is there to confuse you. They give you one more date, September 23rd, and they use the word volunteer, so answer C looks tempting. But it's not about starting work. It's about having a follow-up chat. So the trap is simple. IELTS gives you several possible answers, but only one matches the exact question. So don't choose the first date you hear. Don't choose the word that sounds familiar. Listen for the exact meaning. That's how you avoid this trap. Now, this is just one of the traps IELTS test writers use. If you want to learn the other traps and understand exactly how to avoid them, join our IELTS Intensive Course. In just 2 weeks, we'll teach you what you need to know in a clear, practical, and engaging way. You'll get templates for writing task 1 and writing task 2, useful speaking strategies you can adapt to many questions, a clear breakdown of all the listening and reading question types, practical tips for each section, explanations of the most common traps, and step-by-step guidance on how to avoid them. And all of this in just 2 weeks. Think about it. 2 weeks of focused practice, and then you can finally stop carrying IELTS around in your head. You dedicate 2 serious weeks to IELTS preparation. Take the test, get the score you need, and move on. Then you can focus on your real goals, studying abroad, moving forward in your career, and changing your life for the better. The link to the course is down below. Now, let's move on to part 3.
Part 3. You will hear 2 students called Rosie and Colin discussing their human geography assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Colin, I'm really struggling to think of a topic for our human geography assignment.
Me too, Rosie. I'll tell you what, let's think about the different aspects of human geography and see if we can narrow the topic down a bit to help us decide.
Okay, so one aspect is population. That would be all about population density and migration and so on. Lots of facts and statistics. Maybe a bit boring?
Yeah, but quite straightforward to find on the internet.
Suppose so. How about health? I'd never thought about the links between that and geography until Professor Lee gave us that lecture on cholera. How in the 19th century, a physician used street plans and plans of water supplies to find the source of a cholera epidemic.
Yes, fascinating, wasn't it?
Mm.
Or we could do something more general, like economies.
So how financial and commercial factors are linked to the physical environment?
Yeah.
I thought that had been taken off the syllabus for this year.
Has it?
I'm not sure, but it might be best to avoid it.
Okay. Maybe we could do something on culture. We had that lecture about culture and geography last week.
I didn't get much out of that. It was all so general, and the lecturer didn't give any useful examples.
Yeah, I hardly took any notes. It didn't seem worth it.
Me neither.
We could focus on poverty. That's something that's a global problem.
The trouble is, Dr. Lee was saying, that you have to be careful with some of the figures relating to poverty. They're sometimes deliberately manipulated.
You mean the information gets changed for political reasons?
That sort of thing, yes.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So what are we going to do our assignment on? I'll tell you what, one of the possibilities we haven't discussed is urbanisation. And now over half the world's population lives in cities. That's really important.
Okay, good idea, Rosie. Let's do that.
I love living in a big city, but of course there are problems.
Things like theft and robbery?
Yes, but where I come from, that's linked to another more serious issue, which is that a lot of people don't have jobs. That's getting worse and worse. And we also still have quite a lot of people who are homeless, though that's not quite so bad as it was.
It'd be nice to talk about some positive developments, like some of the new developments on the outskirts of cities.
Yeah, they've opened some massive new shopping centres outside my city.
Yeah, the same with mine, but it's meant a lot of the shops in the city centre are closing down. But the outskirts are ideal for buildings that need a lot of space, like for conferences. They've opened a couple of big ones.
Yes, we've got some too. It'd be nicer to have more facilities for things like football too, but that's not happening where I live.
Same in my area.
We could include something about developing disused industrial sites. It seems like a good idea because you're not doing any harm to the natural environment.
Yeah, but aren't the buildings architecturally significant?
Not really. And what people forget is that they often used quite dangerous materials, chemicals and things, which haven't been properly cleared away. So the whole site has to be made safe.
That can't be cheap, and I bet it's often not budgeted for.
You're right.
Have you read about Masdar City?
In Abu Dhabi? Yes. It was designed to be a green city, wasn't it? That might be a good example of a city which set out to depend entirely on renewable energy.
Yes, we should say something about that. It was designed to be totally pedestrianised too, wasn't it? With the transport underground.
Yes. And they had big plans for recycling to reduce waste to the lowest possible level. But let's stick to talking about power sources.
Then there's that eco-town in England, Green Hill Abbots. It set out to conform to the usual principles, sustainability and so on. A lot of people were against it at first. They said the plans were unrealistic. I'm not sure how far they've got with it. I'll check.
Right. So it looks as if we have a sort of plan. And we can work from
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3.
So, how was that part? Harder? Normally, the listening section is designed to get more difficult with each part, but honestly, I usually find part 3 the hardest. For me, this is the part where you need the most focus. You have to multitask the whole time. Listen, read, follow the speakers, and decode those encrypted messages at the same time. In part 4, it's usually more straightforward. You mainly follow one speaker, keep track of the ideas, and predict possible answers. But part 3 is intense. Now, let's check your answers. D, G, B, A, E, C, A, B, and C. Congratulations if you made 0 mistakes. That's excellent. If you made some mistakes, don't worry. Just write down your score. You can count how many correct answers you got or how many mistakes you made. Now, listen carefully. Remember the strategy I gave you for matching questions? In questions 21 to 25, you had to use that exact strategy. You shouldn't have spent too much time reading questions 21 to 25. Why? Because they come in order. Instead, you should have used most of your preparation time to analyze the answer options, A to G. And in this task, answers A to G were quite challenging because of the vocabulary. Let's go through the most important words and phrases. Vague information means unclear information or general information without enough detail. Relevant to the course means connected to the course. To involve a small number of statistics means to include only a few numbers. Reliable facts means facts you can trust. So, let's review. Vague, unclear or too general. Relevant to, connected to. Involve, include. Reliable, something you can trust. Great. Now let's look at why knowing these words was essential for choosing the correct answers. Let's quickly analyze question 24. This question depends a lot on the vocabulary we've just discussed. It's also one of the questions where I've seen many students make mistakes. A lot of people choose C instead of A. If you made the same mistake, you probably didn't know the meaning of the words we discussed earlier. Question 24 is about culture. The girl says, okay, maybe we could do something on culture. We had that lecture about culture and geography last week. I didn't get much out of that. It was also general, and the lecturer didn't give any useful examples. Then the boy says, yeah, I hardly took any notes. It didn't seem worth it. So, what does this tell us? They don't have much useful information about culture. The boy says he hardly took any notes. Why? Because the lecture was too general, and the lecturer didn't give useful examples. In other words, they don't have enough clear details. So, the answer is not C. It will involve only a small number of statistics. Statistics, numbers, and percentages are not mentioned at all. What is mentioned? The information is too general. And what does vague mean? Unclear or too general, without enough detail. So the correct answer is A. This is a perfect example of why vocabulary matters in IELTS listening. You don't just need to hear the words. You need to understand what they mean in context. Now it's time for part 4. Get your pens ready and let's begin.
Part 4. You will hear part of a food science lecture on fashions in food. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
There are trends in food much as there are trends in clothing. Interest in food fashions has risen rapidly since the birth of the smartphone, when people first began taking photos of their food and instantly sharing them with their friends. The food industry in the UK in particular is obsessed with finding and exploiting the next big food trend. Marketeers aim to create a huge demand for a food item which was previously unknown or not needed. One of the most effective ways of promoting a new food product is by using social media influencers as brand ambassadors. In return for free samples, many influencers will post content about a product. Although there are influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers who can command large fees for their services. Companies which sell vegan produce were pioneers in being able to increase sales really quickly in this way. For a food item to become really popular, it has to be readily available. So supermarkets have a role to play in creating a new food trend. They have dedicated teams closely following which new products or ingredients are trending on social media and are particularly interested in what well-known chefs are putting on their menus. I'd like to look at a few examples of marketing campaigns which were really successful in launching a new fashion trend. Starting in the 1990s with the avocado. A British PR company was hired to raise its profile and stimulate demand. They paid for a group of journalists to travel out to South Africa to meet avocado farmers. Articles written following this visit helped to educate the British public about the avocado, which at this time was certainly not the daily staple it's since become. Advertisements were designed to promote the avocado as a superfood, rich in nutrients and therefore beneficial for health. Avocados became hugely fashionable, and within a few years, UK avocado sales had grown from £13 million annually to around £150 million, making it one of the most successful fresh produce campaigns in UK history. Oat milk is a recent example of a new product which became fashionable very quickly. Now there are many brands available, but one company which had early success was the Swedish brand Oatly. They attracted a lot of attention with a media campaign which used provocation as a way of getting their message across effectively. The fact that this campaign aggravated competitors producing milk from dairy cows was seen as a plus, as it helped to make oat milk seem cool. In the USA, the brand decided against a big retail launch in favour of getting the product into coffee chains, which removed the need for a big advertising budget. This proved far more effective than offering samples in supermarkets. Oat milk had an advantage over other alternative milk products, such as almond milk. Many consumers prefer it because it has less of an impact on the environment. It requires significantly less water to produce than other alternative milk products, and it also has a relatively low carbon footprint. Norwegian scray, a rarely available seasonal fish delicacy, otherwise known as Arctic cod, is now found on the menus of Michelin-starred restaurants throughout Europe. The demand for scray has been used by a food marketing agency to build the reputation of Norway's fisheries in general. Marketing surveys have shown that a significant number of shoppers now associate Norway with excellent seafood. Food trends can be considered a good thing in some ways, as they can benefit farmers and food producers enormously. The public can also be encouraged to buy things which are more sustainably produced. But ethical concerns have been raised about the effects a surge in demand can cause. Quinoa is a classic example. This plant is native to Peru, and when demand peaked some years ago, the price soared, making it unaffordable for local people. While the popularity of quinoa has benefited farmers financially, there have been other negative consequences. As demand grew, farmers began working the land all year round in order to produce more quinoa. One issue has been that the fertility of the soil decreased dramatically, which could potentially lead to desertification in some areas. Another example would be the case of...
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4.
Okay, let's check your answers. 31, photos. Photographs, pictures. This means several answers are accepted. If you wrote photos, your answer is correct. If you wrote photographs, your answer is correct. If you wrote pictures, your answer is also correct. But if you wrote any other word, the answer is incorrect. 32, vegan. 33, chefs or cooks. 34, journalists, reporters. 35, health. 36, coffee. 37, environment. 38, reputation. 39, price or cost. And 40, soil. Now, write down how many answers you got wrong or how many answers you got right. Then calculate your final score. Remember, one correct answer, 1 point. The maximum score is 40 out of 40. The minimum score is 0 out of 40. Now, let's imagine you scored 37 out of 40. What would your band score be? Band scores are the scores you see on your IELTS certificate. They go from 0 to 9. 9 is the highest score and 0 is the lowest. Now check the chart on the screen and find your band score. Again, if you scored 37 out of 40, your band score is 8.5. If you scored, for example, 25 out of 40, your band score is 6. Now you know your approximate listening level. In a way, part 4 is like a harder and more academic version of part 1. So, rule number 7 is this: predict the answers in part 4. For example, when I look at question 31, I know right away that the answer will probably be a noun. How? Because we have the preposition with before the blank and the preposition of after it. So the structure is with plus noun plus of. Now let's look at the meaning of the sentence. The growth and interest in food fashions started with blank of food being shared on social media. What can be shared on social media? Obviously photos, videos, and posts. Photos of food sounds natural. Videos of food also works, but posts of food doesn't work. We normally say posts about food. So the answer is probably photos, videos, or a synonym. Now, why not photo or video in the singular? Because there is no article before the blank. It does not say a photo, a video, the photo, or the video. So the noun should clearly be plural. If you approach each question this way, you help your brain prepare for the answer. Even if you don't understand every word in the recording, once you hear photos, you know it fits. And in the audio, the speaker says, interest in food fashions has risen rapidly since the birth of the smartphone, when people first began taking photos of their food and instantly sharing them with their friends. So the answer is photos. Now, how can you help yourself spot the correct answers? By identifying keywords and listening for those keywords or their synonyms. Look at question 33. The sentence says that someone famous is influential. So before listening, think of synonyms for famous. Well-known, popular, renowned. Then the speaker says they have dedicated teams closely following which new products or ingredients are trending on social media and are particularly interested in what well-known chefs are putting on their menus. Once you hear well-known, you immediately connect it with famous. And then the answer becomes clear: chefs. That's why prediction is so powerful. You're not just waiting for the answer, you're actively preparing for it. And that's exactly what you need to do if you want to get Band 9 in IELTS listening. If your IELTS test is coming up and you still feel unsure about getting the score you need, you can join our IELTS Intensive Course. In this course, you'll get the structure, strategies, templates, practice, and explanations you need to improve your score faster and more confidently. Don't let IELTS delay your plans, your studies, or your future goals. Click the link below and become one of the students who change their lives by taking IELTS at the right time and with the right preparation. Are you looking to improve your speaking skills and achieve a Band 9 on the IELTS speaking section? If so, this video will guide you through some effective techniques to help you reach your goals. In my previous videos, I've covered strategies for achieving a high score in the speaking section. If you haven't seen those yet, I encourage you to check them out. Today, we'll focus on practicing those skills by working through a full speaking section together. As we go along, your task will be to note down any new vocabulary displayed on the screen and apply 3 key techniques: the shadowing technique, the voicing video technique, and the pencil in the mouth technique. If you're not familiar with these techniques, here is a brief explanation. The shadowing technique involves listening to a speaker and repeating their words, focusing on imitating their intonation, pronunciation, and pitch. The voicing video technique requires muting a video, reading the subtitles, and voicing them as if you are a professional voice actor. The pencil in the mouth technique is similar to the voicing video technique, but you'll hold a pencil in your mouth while reading the subtitles. These techniques will help you actively engage with the sample answers you'll hear in a moment. By combining listening and active practice, you'll get the most out of this session. Let's begin. Part 1. Can you find food from many different countries where you live? Oh, absolutely. There is such an incredible variety of food from all over the world. For example, you can find Mediterranean salads, Japanese sushi bars, or Thai curry made with really fresh, healthy ingredients. What I love most is how easy it is to find international dishes that are not only delicious but also nutritious. Honestly, that's one of the best things about living here. Question 2. How often do you eat typical food from other countries? Quite often, to be honest. I'd say at least once or twice a week. I really enjoy dishes like fresh spring rolls, sushi, or quinoa bowls with Middle Eastern spices. There are so many wonderful options that it's hard to resist. And of course, when life gets a little hectic, I order in. It's just so convenient. Question 3. Have you ever tried making food from another country? Yes. I've made paneer curry before, and it was a great experience. I used fresh paneer and cooked it with spices like turmeric and cumin. Then when I added coconut milk, it really brought everything together and gave it a rich, smooth texture. Although it took a little longer than I expected, it was definitely worth it. The flavors were rich and the balance was just right. Question 4. What food from your country would you recommend to people from other countries? I'd probably recommend grilled salmon. It's not only healthy but also super easy to make. Just season it and grill it for a few minutes, and you've got a tasty meal in no time. It's light but satisfying and perfect for any occasion. Plus, it pairs well with a variety of sides, making it a truly versatile dish. That's the end of part 1. As you might have noticed, I used plenty of topic-related vocabulary in my answers, like smooth texture, to season a dish, nutritious, healthy ingredients, and more. Using topic-specific vocabulary is crucial because it shows the examiner that you can handle a wide range of topics with accuracy and flexibility. If you'd like to learn more vocabulary for common topics like your hometown or accommodations and get a deeper understanding of the assessment criteria, be sure to check out our comprehensive IELTS course. You'll find the link below. Now, part 2. Describe a law that was introduced in your country and that you thought was a very good idea. You should say what the law was, who introduced it, when and why it was introduced, and explain why you thought this law was such a good idea. One law that was introduced in my country, which I think is a great idea, is the ban on single-use plastic bags in supermarkets and shops. The Ministry of Environment created this law about 3 years ago to help reduce plastic waste and promote eco-friendly habits. Essentially, the law prevents stores from giving out thin plastic bags and encourages shoppers to use reusable alternatives, such as fabric or biodegradable bags. It was introduced because plastic pollution had become a huge issue, particularly in cities and rivers. I think this law is a brilliant move for several reasons. First of all, it helps the environment by reducing waste that can harm animals or clog waterways. It has also raised awareness about the importance of reusing and reducing waste, myself included. For example, whenever I go to the supermarket now, I always bring my own reusable bag. Plus, I don't know if I would have paid as much attention to it before, but now I really notice the difference. Public spaces are much cleaner, and there is noticeably less plastic waste in parks and on the streets. The law not only helps reduce pollution, but also encourages others to be more mindful of what they dispose of. Overall, I genuinely believe this law is making a positive difference, and it's a great step forward for the environment. Now, let's move on to part 3. Question 1. What kinds of rules are common in a school? In most schools, there are a few rules that are pretty standard. For example, students are expected to be on time and attend classes regularly. I think this is very important because it sets a tone of responsibility and respect, not just for the teacher, but for the classmates too. On top of that, schools usually have a dress code, where students have to wear appropriate uniforms or follow a certain style. They are also expected to show respect for both teachers and peers, which I personally believe is key to creating a positive learning environment. Finally, there are rules about things like using cell phones during lessons or eating in classrooms. At my school, for instance, phones were collected at the start of the day, which helped everyone stay focused in class. I think these rules are essential because they create an environment where both students and teachers can concentrate on education without unnecessary distractions. Question 2. How important is it to have rules in a school? Well, it's absolutely essential to have some rules in schools. Without them, there would be chaos, making it incredibly difficult for students to focus or for teachers to teach effectively. The thing is, rules help maintain order, ensuring that everyone is treated fairly and that resources are used efficiently. They also foster a sense of responsibility and respect among students. In my experience, when students clearly understand the boundaries and expectations, they're more likely to succeed both academically and socially. At the end of the day, it's all about creating an environment where everyone feels safe and valued. Question 3. What do you recommend should happen if children break school rules? If kids break school rules, I think there should be clear consequences that match the situation. For smaller issues like disrupting class, a verbal warning or detention could work well. But if the behavior keeps happening, something more serious like a parent-teacher conference or losing recess might be needed. For bigger violations like repeated disruptions, a short-term or even long-term suspension could be necessary, depending on how serious the situation is. The important thing is that the consequences make sense for the behavior and help the student understand why their actions were wrong. The goal should be to guide them toward better choices and to learn from their mistakes, not just punish them. If the issues are serious or happen a lot, then it's really important to get parents and school administrators involved in finding a long-term solution. Another question is, can you suggest why many students decide to study law at university? Sure. I think a lot of students choose law because it opens up so many career options. It's not just about becoming a lawyer. Law graduates can work in fields like business, politics, or even human rights, which gives them a lot of flexibility. What really draws people in, though, is that law feels like a meaningful career. You're learning how to solve problems, help others, and make a real difference in society. Plus, law is often seen as a prestigious and financially rewarding career, which definitely appeals to a lot of students. So it's a combination of wanting to have an impact and the practical benefits, like job security and stability. What are the key personal qualities needed to be a successful lawyer? I think being a successful lawyer comes down to a mix of skills and personality traits. First of all, you have to be really good at communicating, whether it's making an argument in court or just explaining something clearly to a client. Being able to stay calm under pressure is also huge, because the job can be super intense at times. And then there is attention to detail. Lawyers deal with so many little things that can make or break a case. Finally, I'd say resilience is key, because it's not an easy career and you have to be able to handle setbacks and keep going. It's a mix of being sharp, determined, and really good with people. Do you agree that working in the legal profession is very stressful? Sure, I'd say working in the legal profession is definitely stressful. I think that's because lawyers deal with tight deadlines and tough cases, and sometimes they even have to hold the pressure of carrying people's lives on their shoulders. Take a criminal lawyer in a high-stakes trial, for example. They've got to manage huge amounts of stress while trying to get the best outcome for their client. That being said, I don't know if stress is entirely bad. Sometimes it can push people to perform at their absolute best. But too much stress can adversely affect lawyers' health in the long run, so anyone working in the field should take good care of themselves. I'm going to give you 10 tips to boost your IELTS writing score in no time. First, discuss tips for academic writing task 1. Then general training writing task 1. And finally, writing task 2. Let's dive in. Academic writing task 1. Tip 1. To succeed in academic writing task 1, learn to write an effective overview. In fact, the overview is the most important part of your answer, so you must develop the skill of writing it well. Remember, you should only include the main features of the chart in your overview. These are the key trends, patterns, and standout features, such as increases or decreases over time. You should never include numbers or other specific details in the overview. One more suggestion: to make your overview easy for the examiner to spot, write it in a separate paragraph and start it with the word overall. By doing this, you ensure that the examiner doesn't miss the most important part of your answer. Tip 2. Divide the information in the body paragraphs logically. There should normally be 2 body paragraphs, so you need to decide which data to include in each. There is no strict rule for how to divide the data, but it must follow a logical structure. For example, if you're given a line graph, and some lines show an upward trend, while others show a downward trend, you might describe the lines with a positive trend in the first body paragraph, and those with a negative trend in the second. Tip number 3. If you want to increase your score in writing task 1, you must use specific vocabulary for different types of visual information. As you may know, there are 7 common types: line graphs, bar charts, pie charts, tables, combinations of charts, diagrams, maps, or plans. You can use similar vocabulary for the first 5 types: line graphs, bar charts, pie charts, tables, and combinations. But diagrams and maps require different vocabulary. For example, for graphs and charts, you need to know words like to skyrocket, to plunge, to have, considerably, and respectively. For diagrams, useful words include cyclic, man-made, to distribute, to purify. For maps and plans, words like to repurpose, to accommodate, to relocate, and to demolish will be especially useful. In our IELTS comprehensive course, we cover all these words with illustrations to help you remember them better and use them naturally on test day. Remember, using varied and precise vocabulary will help you describe data clearly and show your ability to analyze information effectively, both of which are crucial for a high score. General training writing task. Tip 4. My main tip for this task is to learn the structure of letters. Not all countries follow the same rules for writing letters as the UK does. So many test takers struggle with structuring their letters properly. Remember, a letter should include 8 elements. Opening salutation, like Dear John. Purpose of the letter, why you're writing. First bullet point. Second bullet point. Third bullet point. Closing statement, like I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Closing salutation, for example, kind regards, and your name, Jessica. Each element should be written in a separate paragraph for clarity. Tip 5. Another tip for general training writing task 1 is to learn the difference between formal and informal styles. Each part of the letter, such as salutation, closing, and vocabulary, will change depending on the required level of formality: formal, semi-formal, or informal. This is something we teach in our course, providing easy-to-use templates for each style. Now, let's test your knowledge of formal and informal vocabulary. I'll give you the informal version of a verb, and you try to think of the formal equivalent. To buy, to purchase, to help, to assist, to tell, to inform. How did you do? If you found this difficult, you need to brush up on your academic vocabulary. Now, writing task 2. Tip 6. The first thing to remember for writing task 2 is to plan your essay. This may sound obvious, but do you know how many students go off topic simply because they come up with ideas while writing instead of planning beforehand? Going off topic is one of the most common mistakes I see, even among my 101 students who are at the upper intermediate or advanced level. To avoid this, plan your essay before you start writing. First, come up with your main ideas and draft an outline, including a clear position and supporting arguments. Then, begin writing. You'll be surprised how much faster you can complete your essay when you have a solid plan. Tip number 7, mimic the structure of the prompt when writing your introduction. Every IELTS essay prompt includes a general statement and a specific question. So do the same in your introduction. Start with a general statement, introducing the topic, and then clearly answer the question or questions given in the prompt. Tip number 8, structure your body paragraphs properly. A well-organized body paragraph follows this pattern: topic sentence, introducing your main point, explanation, elaborating on your idea, and then example, providing supporting evidence, concluding sentence, connecting back to the essay question. This structure helps ensure your ideas flow logically and smoothly. Tip 9, study the assessment criteria carefully. It's crucial to understand what examiners look for in your answer. You can find the official IELTS writing band descriptors here. Review them carefully and create a checklist to use when proofreading your essays. Tip 10. It's important to distinguish between your opinion and other people's opinions in writing task 2. If the question asks for your opinion, express it clearly throughout the essay, not just in the introduction or conclusion. If the question asks you to discuss different views, it's important to show that what you're writing is not your opinion, but other people's opinions. For example, to express your opinion, write, "I believe that." To present others' opinions, use "it's believed that." We're going to read a text about how a 4-day workweek affects employees and businesses. But before we start, take a piece of paper and divide it into 2 columns. On the left, draw a plus sign, and on the right, draw a minus sign. As you listen, write down the main pros on the left and the cons on the right. The 4-day workweek, a game changer or a risky move? In recent years, the concept of a 4-day workweek has gained popularity, especially after companies in countries like Iceland, Japan, and the UK conducted large-scale trials. Many businesses are now experimenting with shorter work weeks to improve work-life balance and boost productivity. Supporters argue that reducing the number of workdays leads to higher job satisfaction, as employees experience lower stress levels and have more time for personal interests and family. For instance, Microsoft Japan tested a 4-day workweek in 2019 and reported a 40% increase in productivity, as well as reduced electricity and paper usage. Additionally, many companies find that a compressed schedule enhances efficiency, as employees become more focused and waste less time on unnecessary meetings. Another advantage is that a shorter work week can lead to lower operational costs. With employees in the office for fewer days, businesses spend less on electricity, heating, and office supplies. For example, Shake Shack, a popular US restaurant chain, introduced a 4-day work week for some managers and found that it improved employee retention, helping them keep talented staff longer. However, critics argue that this model is not suitable for all industries. In sectors like healthcare, retail, and customer service, where businesses need to operate 7 days a week, reducing work hours could lead to staff shortages and increased pressure on employees. In France, for instance, some companies that adopted a 4-day workweek struggled to maintain productivity because employees found it difficult to complete the same workload in fewer hours. Another concern is that some companies may reduce wages to reflect the shorter workweek, making it financially challenging for employees. In some cases, workers report feeling overwhelmed as they try to complete their tasks on a tighter schedule. Despite the drawbacks, trials in places like Iceland and Spain have reported positive outcomes, with employees feeling happier and companies maintaining or even increasing productivity. While the 4-day workweek may not be a one-size-fits-all solution, it continues to spark debate about the future of work. Now, let's go over some useful words and phrases related to work and the 4-day workweek that we have encountered in this text. Number 1, work-life balance. The balance between work responsibilities and personal life. Example, a 4-day workweek can improve work-life balance by giving employees more free time. 2, productivity. The efficiency of work, often measured by output. Some studies show that a shorter work week can increase productivity. 3, job satisfaction. How happy and fulfilled employees feel at work. Employees with flexible schedules often report higher job satisfaction. Stress levels. The amount of stress a person experiences at work. Working fewer hours can help reduce stress levels and prevent burnout. Compressed schedule. It's a work schedule that allows employees to complete the same tasks in fewer days. Many companies are experimenting with a compressed schedule to see if it improves efficiency. Now, efficiency means working in a way that gets the most done. with the least wasted time or effort. Employees often work with greater efficiency when they have fewer hours. Operational costs. The money a company spends on daily business activities, such as rent and utilities. A shorter work week can help reduce operational costs by using less electricity and office space. 8. Maintain productivity. To keep the same level of efficiency despite changes. One challenge of a 4-day work week is finding ways to maintain productivity. Overwhelmed. Feeling too much pressure or stress from work. Employees might feel overwhelmed if they are expected to do the same amount of work in fewer hours. Workload. The amount of work assigned to a person. If companies do not reduce employees' workload, a shorter work week could cause more stress. Wage reduction. A decrease in salary. For example, some workers worry that a 4-day work week could lead to wage reductions. Flexible work arrangements. Alternative ways of working, such as remote work or flexible hours. Some companies offer flexible work arrangements instead of a 4-day work week. 13. Burnout. Extreme exhaustion from work-related stress. For example, a 4-day work week may prevent burnout by giving employees more rest. Employee retention. The ability of a company to keep its workers long-term. For example, companies with better work-life balance tend to have higher employee retention rates. 15. Positive outcomes. Good results from a decision or action. For example, several companies have tested the 4-day work week and reported positive outcomes. Now, let's check your understanding. Complete the sentences that appear on the screen using the right word from our vocabulary list. 1. Employees may feel blank if they have to complete the same amount of work in fewer days. Overwhelmed. 2. Taking more breaks and reducing work hours can prevent blank, which affects employees' health and motivation. Burnout. 3. One benefit of the 4-day work week is that it can reduce blank costs, such as electricity and office supplies. Operational. Some argue that working fewer hours leads to greater as employees focus more on completing their tasks. Efficiency. Several businesses that have tested the 4-day work week have reported including happier workers and improved efficiency. Positive outcomes. 6. Companies that offer better work-life balance often see higher blank as employees are less likely to quit. Employee retention. A blank schedule allows employees to finish their work week in fewer days. Compressed. Some employees fear that a shorter work week could result in a blank, as they would be paid for fewer hours. Wage reduction. A 4-day work week is often introduced to improve employees and give them more free time. Work-life balance. Many workers suffer from high due to long hours and tight deadlines. Stress levels. Some companies report higher blank because employees are more focused. Productivity. One challenge for businesses is how to productivity while reducing work hours. Maintain. If companies do not reduce the blank, a 4-day work week could lead to stress and burnout. Workload. Many businesses are moving toward blank work arrangements, such as remote work and flexible schedules. Flexible. Employees with a good work environment and fair wages often experience higher job satisfaction. Now, you're going to practice with an actual IELTS Writing Task 2 essay. You'll have 40 minutes to complete the task. Feel free to use all the vocabulary and arguments you've learned today. This will help you remember them better, as applying new words in your own writing is one of the best ways to make them stick. Here's your task. The working week should be shorter, and workers should have a longer weekend. Do you agree or disagree? Now take your time, organize your ideas, and use examples to support your points. If you struggle with these essays but need to boost your score quickly, join our course. We'll teach you all the key skills for writing high-scoring essays. If you're looking for feedback, go for the Pro package. It includes a personal consultation with me. Or if you want more in-depth coaching, the IELTS coaching package gives you 10 45-minute lessons with me, plus a private chat for 2 months. Check out the link below. Well, now you're better prepared for the IELTS test. Let me know in the comments if you found this video helpful and if there are any other topics you would like me to cover. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the upcoming videos. And remember, getting a high score on the IELTS is not impossible. You can do it. See you very soon. Bye.